Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all. Thanks for joining us in this edition of the BRM Brown Bag. We are in episode number 13, and I'm happy to have today Nick from Canada. And we're going to, Nick, how are you? And how are things at your end in Canada? Hope everyone is safe and you're doing well.
We are, and I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Excellent. So, Nick, today's theme is BRM in the Government of Canada. So, for viewers, why don't you give us a quick rundown memory lane of your journey and what happened for you to take the BRM role, and then we'll get this kick started. Yeah.
Yeah, no problems. Memory lane doesn't seem too long ago, but it seems like it was just yesterday. But time does fly, as they say. BRM kind of fell on my lap. It was really not in my career path or any view that I had. My background's more a technical engineering background, and as I was making my way through my career within the government, it's actually a mentor of mine who told me that BRM might be the next thing, the next best thing where we want to go. And I was starting to align some of my objectives with service management in general. And his opinion was maybe not forget about service management, but maybe you should go to see what BRM is all about. And I took the BRMP as the first training course, really in Ottawa. I had really no understanding of what it was. Kind of just went there, but it really piqued my curiosity, and kind of the light starting to go off as far as, okay, we actually need this, and this does make sense, and this can work. And you can see where you probably have gaps in your own organization, department, agency, and you're saying, well, BRM can maybe fix these links. From there, it was an eye-opening journey at BRM Connect in 2018 in San Diego. And that really, I guess, fueled the fire, if I can use that expression, to start moving and start putting things together. I know we'll talk about a few things later on, but then after that, it was the CBRM, the value workshop, the strategic partnering workshops, and really getting involved into the community space as well. So that's been about the last 3-4 years. And it's been an exciting journey. It's been a fun journey. It's been a challenging journey, but one that I don't regret at all. And it's taking me where I am today. And I owe a lot to the BRM kind of foundation that it's put into me.
And kudos to your efforts in terms of building that community within the BRM Institute online campus. I hope that we have more regions within Canada also imbibe business relationship management beyond Ottawa, right? Montreal, everyone together at one place. So let's kickstart. The first question is, how do you start BRM in government, knowing that governments are not typically the early adopters when it comes to picking up these skills? So how has been your experience kickstarting something kind of a BRM in the government sector?
Yeah, I think there's a stigma within government that no, they're not the early adopters. They're not the most innovative. They usually wait till something is more sustained and implemented before they adopt something. But I think with everything that's been going on in the world in the last year and a half, I think government has shown that they can be early adopters and they can move fast if we want to. And I think that without really knowing, BRM has been in the government for the last 10, 15 years, but maybe underneath a different umbrella. And some may call it as client relationship, client management, but it was really around the tactical role. There was never really a thought about involving IT or the client or business aspect with the actual business lines to talk about capabilities, talk about value, talk about strategic. It was more, call me if you have issues and I'll see how I can fix them. Right. And that's the role that it's been for years and years and years. So government is, I would say, I think in Canada in general, or maybe a bit behind in the BRM landscape. When I was at a previous department, the conversations were happening, but it was the reasoning or the why, right? Why do we need that was always the real challenge. So starting is really about breaking that mold, breaking that culture. And that's going to be the most challenging thing. And it's not only, one time throughout your BRM journey, it's going to be throughout your BRM journey, is always not going back to the previous culture and always trying to look forward and look ahead. And that's always going to be a challenge, and just starting something in government, right? And it's not as easy sometimes to get positions or get funding or get the approvals to move forward. So you kind of have to look within as to what you have and make it work, but also knowing that potentially these people are already filling a role, and you may be leaving a gap by moving other things. But the biggest thing that I could say was that how to start is have that conversation. Have that conversation, involve your executive team, involve your manager, your supervisors. And I know BRM offers the great, quick executive brief workshop. And I've personally sent some of my CFOs or director generals or CIOs to these courses. And that really helped me kickstart the conversation from the top and from the bottom to what I call the sandwich effect, where you kind of meet in the middle and you have to force that conversation. It's not just trying to, have that conversation from the bottom. It's really an uphill climb. So really, I think government has proven that they can be adopters. They can be early adopters. Just the culture is not there to do it. And BRM hopefully can be one of those things that we can adopt. I know we're maybe not late to the game. It's never late to adopt something and move something forward, but I think we can maybe be leaders in that space hopefully one day and demonstrate that we can hopefully understand what the Canadian citizens and what our business line want, and be able to implement and deliver on those.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things I always get intrigued, and probably you are the best person to handle. When it comes to a commercial sector, you can actually talk about revenue, cost optimization, and stuff like that. But in a sector where you're trying to look at citizens and residents in the country and in the state, how do you define value? I mean, what kind of things that you would go in terms of measurable aspects, particularly in a government context, because the level playing field is way different from the commercial sector.
Yeah, so value in government, it's tough because everything you see templates, everything you see online from even third party, information services or independent services is all about return on investment, and it's always about the financial. That's the first thing you'll see. But unfortunately, we can't really track that. So really, it's about time, effort, resources, time to consumers, time to Canadian citizens. Really, how quickly can we turn things around on the inside? So the value is a bit different, but it's still the definition of value, right? It's really maximizing something. So what we tend to do is when we have an idea or a demand that's really at the early stages, is really try to define that value, but we don't talk about a return on investment. That's really not a conversation we're having. We try to shift the focus as far as how much capacity or availability is this going to free up internally as far as resourcing. How are we going to lean this process or maximize the efficiency of this process so some things can get quicker, to hopefully do more with less, and that's hopefully something that we can achieve. But I think that's also the mindset of government, as far as we're not really looking to gather money back or obtain funds. It's more about delivering the value in a different way.
And as you look at this ecosystem, I'm quite keen to see how is BRM ecosystem within the government setup, right? Because I just want to know how is the logical models in which the different departments works. So every government has got their own departments and the way they organize themselves. So how is that structured? What does the ecosystem look like? How is the BRM fitting into the overall scheme of the government ecosystem?
It's a tricky question to answer because there's several departments or agencies across the Canadian government. But if we look at a department or an agency as one entity for now, usually you'll have the business relationship, or however that unit is defined, sitting within IT. And usually, typically, because this is something new, the mentality or the culture of understanding that potentially BRM doesn't need to be buried somewhere in IT. It needs to be brought up to the top so they can have that influence and can get out of the tactical role. That's the, I guess, I think, hardest challenge within the actual ecosystem within government, because the mindset or your first thought of usually senior executives, if they don't have the awareness or they haven't been to some of the training or understand really the concepts of BRM, that we shouldn't be tactical. Not saying that you don't need to, you don't want to, but you're trying to aim to be strategic. But it's extremely difficult to be doing that if you're buried between 5-6 level of management to have any influence. So I think that's a challenge within the ecosystem, but I think that can be fixed, as people get more aware. But the ecosystem also evolves about people being passionate about BRM, having the support outside of IT. And something that I did at a previous department is, just show the influence and start with one business line, start with one branch, and show that this can be done, and there is some positive that can come out of this, and there's really it can be profitable. We can maximize on this relationship and understand where these branches are going. So that's what I did on my behalf, is to show the value of BRM, is to do this with one of our business lines and really bring that business line from, we'll call it low maturity scale, to a high maturity scale, and understanding where they're going, not only where their issues are today, right? Try to get out of that conversation. So that was really good as far as, helping the ecosystem. That was relying on partners and relationships that you have outside of IT to hopefully come and influence inside of IT, to help elevate the BRM landscape and that maturity. But also, the ecosystem doesn't stop within the department or the agency by itself. You have to, I think, rely on your community. You have to rely on some of your peers and see what they are doing, because oftentimes they're also going through the same challenges as you are. And to use an expression I like to use is, there's no need to reinvent the wheel, right? If it's already been solved somewhere else, let's use that framework. Let's use their lessons learned and what they did, and apply it. Because oftentimes one agency or department within the government is very similar to others, and they're going through the same challenges. And then also comes the size, right? The size of the department or agency, I think, is a big factor. If you're a department or agency of 3,000, 5,000, I think the difficulty is much greater to elevate the BRM maturity and to influence and to start somewhere, because the demand, the idea, the value, the relationships are just that much more. And in the department that I am now, the department's much smaller, and we're going through that BRM journey right now, and it's much easier because it's a small department. You can have more of those one-on-one relationships and have that holistic view much quicker than a larger department. So there's multiple factors, but I think they're all challenging. But when they're all put together, I think you can definitely achieve success. And you can't achieve success sometimes by only one person. I think you need that team around you.
Yeah, and when you made a really good point, because it's when you have small number of people, it's quite nimble, autonomous. You're kind of sharing. But how that does play a sport in a larger department agency where you have so many different people? Is that kind of a flow from the top to bottom, sideways? Is that a kind of a flow in terms of knowledge sharing that is possible? Or is it kind of constrained by the size or the department size that you operate, particularly when it comes to government sector, in terms of elevating the BRM positions?
It can be a flow. I mean, from top to bottom. I think it comes down to influencing, getting your message across. Sometimes that's just as difficult, right? Because if the BRM is buried at the bottom, and you have to convince your manager, and that manager has to convince another manager, and go back and forth, it's like the telephone game, right? The color yellow obviously becomes color red, or a different color by the time it gets to the top. And then your message just got lost in translation. So the approach, if you can do, is try to always be present when the message is being delivered, to pass on that knowledge and that information. And one thing that when we brought the BRM executive workshops at a previous department, I made sure to be present in all those workshops to answer questions that were maybe particular to our agency or department, to kind of put those links together. So there can be a top down, but there also can be a vertical. I think there was also some positive awareness when we brought business lines in, to kind of have that discussion of where we wanted to go and how this would benefit them. And right away they were saying yes, right? And they wanted to be part of this. So if you have business lines that are saying yes right away and want to be on board, sometimes that's enough to influence or to get a yes within the IT to maybe put something in place and to start something. And again, I would recommend starting small, starting something that you know, that you're familiar with, a business line that you know, maybe already have a good relationship with, so that you can both hopefully see success or get success out of this, and really demonstrate the value of BRM as you mature.
Excellent. So what are some of the challenges within the BRM, not only to start, but maintain BRM as a practice? So how does that play it? I mean, I know you have individually BRMs could be the evangelist who can drive things, but building a practice is another monster altogether. How do you handle that to a degree of consistency and sustainability?
It's challenging within the government. There's different programs also to move people around, so that the different different experiences, different knowledge and training, and put their skills to work in different areas. So sometimes, you know, your team changes from year to year, and it's extremely hard from a knowledge standpoint to maintain the practice. But even if we take a step back as far as putting the practice in place, again, I think it goes to one of my first answers, the first question. It's breaking that mold, breaking that culture. Right now, you know, just using the word client versus business, right? Sometimes it's just a small word that can make a big difference. And a lot of the departments are currently using client, you know, relationship or client management or client services. And I think that's where we need to break a mold to a certain degree and really focus on the business aspect and really put in place where we want to go. However, I think if I refer to one of the slides or one of the graphics in some of the BRM trainings, is those maturities, right? There's certain goals or milestones that you must achieve before even talking strategic, right? It's sometimes tough to talk strategic if, you know, IT can't deliver on services, IT can't deliver on, you know, basic value. So establishing that practice, you know, it takes time, especially if you don't have the trust or the you know, the power of influence within the business, and if you can't get your own house in order or your foundation within IT is broken. So, but putting the practice together, like I said, also takes a voice. It's not someone behind the curtain, you know, sitting at their desk that's going to write a piece of paper or a document and save it and cross their fingers that it's going to get done or get implemented. It's not really a governance piece. It's more of a framework and how something should be put in place. So, you know, writing something, I think we can all, you know, write a document or putting, you know, put some words on paper, but establishing that practice, maintaining that practice, you have to be loud. You have to be a voice and get into those tough conversations, and you will be challenged. That's expected of, because sometimes you're challenging other roles that potentially are already within that space, or people that are doing similar lines. And I think that's where the BRM practice also needs to be defined at the agency, because you'll see, you know, there's service desks, there's the BRM, there's, you know, people that are doing the shift towards agile and having product owner, product management. But all these roles have a need within the IT organization. It's how do you all put them together, and we can all play in the same, what I call the same sandbox, but also, you know, be there for the business in different opportunities or in different ways, but see success and value in everything that we do. So maintaining that practice, establishing that practice can be challenging. And I will also, you know, say that the BRM community, especially in Ottawa where I'm located, has grown and has been very supportive, and able to, you know, share ideas and share challenges and how to, you know, overcome certain things that are happening within the government space. So one can't be afraid to look outside of the department agency for support. I think that's a big factor, and there is support out there. You just have to know where to find it. And I think that's one thing, or no, some aspects of establishing and maintaining that practice. And it's not you do it once and you close your eyes and it'll be done forever. You have to keep going, because IT is always evolving, the business is always evolving, roles are changing. So BRM has to, you know, continue, as a BRM, you have to continue to, you know, be present and be in that workspace to work with the business and bring the value back to IT.
Yeah, that's excellent. And in terms of getting your teams within the department, the agencies, how much of value do you think these training, the workshops on BRMP, CBRM, strategic focus, strategic partnering, value focused, and the executive workshops have helped the government of Canada, right? Because you know that you've gone through that, but do you see that value being perceived and applied in the context of the department or agencies? Do you think that there is a worth investment of time, effort, and resources when they are put into these kind of workshops? Because a lot of people do not know about these values. So we wanted to hear from you as practitioners whether this content is actually making a lot of sense going back to your workplace and implementing and seeing that visible improvements in terms of value recognition and value harvesting to your business partners.
Yeah, I think there's whether the course or the workshops can be applied at different levels. And I think it depends on the level of maturity of where you are as far as implementing BRM. I think for me, when I went through the workshops and, correlation to where we were as far as a BRM journey, the workshop that provided most value to me was the value workshop, as far as how to harvest that value, assess where the value is, value leakage, value optimization, especially when we had, close to over 300, ideas kind of submitted in a backlog, and you're looking at these numbers and all the different ideas and try to make sense of it all. So it was almost that this workshop kind of put everything together, as far as maybe we need to start back at zero, and although a painful process, go through every idea or demand and understand the value of each. How do we measure the value, and knowing the value can be tangible or intangible, and everybody's got a different definition of value. But we are able to bring the value back to the strategic objectives, the risk, complexity, things like that, and how we maximize on resources and processes. So those that workshop really benefited me as far as where I was in my BRM journey and some of the current issues. However, definitely strategic partnering was also a very valuable workshop to understand how to talk to a C-level or really a management to really either influence, convince, start that relationship, start that partnership as far as working together, not against each other. And it's not that, and also not IT just receiving the ideas and not hearing from IT, from a year down the road saying, oh yeah, you submitted an idea a year ago, can we talk about it, right? So how do we have that conversation right away? What's that process? What are the topics that one should or shouldn't bring up or discuss, and how to keep the conversation at a strategic level and not to revert to default, what I call going back to tactical, because I think that's the easy conversation, right? What issues are you having and how can we fix them? But how to say, where do you want to go? What capabilities do you want to develop? Where do you see your business line in 2 or 3 years from now? And how can IT be a success for you? So those are definitely different questions. So those 2 workshops definitely helped me in my journey, and nothing against the BRM or the CBRM course, great courses in itself. I think the BRMP lays really the foundation of what a BRM is, and the CBRM really puts those advanced knowledge or those advanced skills of how to put everything together with the workshop. So I think it depends where you are in your journey, but those 2 workshops have a great need depending where you are.
Excellent. So last and final question is, in your opinion, what is the future of the BRM role within the government, and particularly in government of Canada, or areas where you think for people, because you have a lot of people around the government sector, agencies across the US, and we have a lot of conversations. I'm sure that will benefit them, for them to see how the future is lying forward, that they could be better prepared to handle it.
Yeah, it's no one can predict the future, and I'll start with that. This is my opinion, by all means. But what I've heard talking to other executives, talking to other BRMs, whether it's around government in the United States or Canada, is trying to do less with more, right? There's some cost cutting and cost optimization, if you want to use some of those terms, happening. Unfortunately, BRMs are still present, which is great to hear. And looking at numbers, there's just as many BRMs in Canada as in the US or close to. So I think when I talk about future for government BRMs in Canada, I think we're getting there. We're getting there in numbers. The awareness is out. Now I think it's a matter of connecting. It's like we all are BRMs, or there's BRMs everywhere in your community, yet you don't know where they are, and you got to go search for them. If I can use that expression in a term. So we are trying to put a BRM community Canada-wide over there, launching very shortly, to try and get that awareness and get that participation level, and get people like all out of hiding, and involved into the BRM community to share that information. But if I look at BRM role by itself, as for where we're going to go, I'm hoping within the next few years that word client, goes away from the language of government space. Again, that's, I think, a culture change. I think we really need to fix or fixate ourselves on the business side. But I can definitely see some of the strategies and policies put in place government-wide are really more focused on service, on digital, on strategic, on partnerships, and the right capabilities are being asked of or put in place by different departments. So I think the future BRM, hopefully, within the government space, is also a lot of awareness, moving away from the tactical and going to strategic. And I think that's a big change for government, because the default mentality when you implement something in BRM, especially in large departments, oh, we have another unit or department or division to help out with issues or tech issues that we have, which is really not what BRM is there for. We want to help with the the value of the planning, the strategic part, as far as help drive IT. So I'm hoping that over the next few years, that's where the BRM shifts as far as the maturity, growth, also within, as far as positioning within the BRM, not buried, as I mentioned earlier, but really more elevated and out there and well positioned, and keep bringing that awareness into those business lines. So there's definitely different angles. There's lots of work to be done. It's a long journey. It's a journey that may never get done, but I think we're on the right track as far as BRM and government. It's just going to take a bit more time.
Excellent. So I definitely recommend anybody. And what would be a last final call to action for anybody who's listening to this view of the podcast on BRMs, but not probably behind the scenes and doing that? What would be a call for action for BRMs in Canada, be it Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal? What would you be a message that you would like to call them for them to be participating in these kind of forums and having these discussions move forward?
If you're a BRM in hiding, as far as I would say, if you've taken the BRM course, great. If you haven't, please take the BRM course. I think it helps connect the dots and put some framework and maybe some common sense behind some of the things that you're doing, and hopefully you're going to see that light bulb moment. And if you have taken that course or afterwards, I strongly encourage you to join with the BRM Institute and join the Canada community. There's really some great meetups. There's some great information being shared. Whether you're government, whether you're private, it doesn't matter. We're putting everybody together and trying to build that awareness and having those discussions. Everybody's at a different level of BRM, and all are welcome to discuss and help and be a role model to others. And I hope you can find some great information and some valuable tools within the community afterwards.
Thank you so much, Nick, for sharing your valuable insights about the BRM and Government of Canada. It was a great pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure by this talk and the Brown Bag, we'll have a lot more people motivated to join the bandwagon as part of BRMs in this space. And I look forward to seeing you sometime physically again back when everything opens up in the next BRM Connect.
Perfect. Thank you, Suresh. Thank you very much.